All right. Welcome to an edition of the Exciting Times. I have Marcia Shannon here for a lovely interview. And to kick it off, Marcia, who are you and where were you born?
Oh, well, I am Stormy's daughter. Um, I was born Marcia Weaver in Tulare, California, in 1942.
Whereabout is Larry? Is that in the northern
Tulare?
part?
No, it's in the southern part. It's
Uh-huh.
between Bakersfield and Fresno.
I see.
Yeah, and down there's rich agricultural land for cotton down there and alfalfa.
What's one of your earliest memories that shaped who you are today?
Hmm. Um, when my parents left me during the war. I guess it would be in 44, 45, with my grandparents who lived down a
Wow,
block away.
how old were you?
Three. Um, yeah, my dad was drafted into the war, but he was a CPA, an accountant, so he did desk work. He didn't have to go into combat. But my mother must have wanted to go with him really bad. He was stationed back in Maryland, close to D.C., I guess, Pennsylvania and Maryland. Hmm. And I guess she just decided to leave her 2, 3-year-old kid with her in-laws, and somehow it affected my heart. I had rheumatic fever
Mm.
about within 6 months after they came home, and we all lived in we were back home again. My grandparents lived a block away,
How long did you live with your grandparents?
probably over the winter, not too long. Funny thing is, David's parents did the same with him when they came up here. Mama's parents built the place where we live, and they bought 40 acres and gave 10 to David's mom, their daughter. And but so David's parents had good jobs down in Southern California. He worked in the oil well,
Mm.
on the oil
Mm-hmm.
rigs, and she worked for a doctor as a receptionist or something. And so they left their kids, their two boys, David being 2, his brother being 3 or 4, with grandparents
Mm.
also. And he had rheumatic fever when he was about 8.
Interesting.
I just thought that was no coincidence.
After they got you back from your grandparents, what what do you remember daily life being like for you as a child?
Let's see. Okay, probably came. Well, I remember the ride home. I remember my grandmother taking me back there to be reunited on a train, and on a Pullman train. I remember that. That was quite a trip. And let's see. So I guess I was reunited with my parents, and they were coming home, so they took some vacation time on the way home, driving home with a car. Must have bought a car. My mother told me she had me on a leash in Grand Central Station.
So that didn't just start in the last 15 years then.
No, no, I was probably necessary because it was so crowded that
Hmm.
people were coming home from the war. Let's see, it was probably a 45. I'm sure 46. Yeah, I'd have been 4 and 46 in March. So I was in the womb and during Pearl Harbor.
Oh wow.
My mother was in that case anyway. Anyway, it was California, Central Valley, and the hospital windows were blacked out because everybody was afraid of a Japanese attack. She remembers that very well.
Wow.
Hmm. And I remember her telling me she stayed in the hospital for 2 weeks because that was normal then, no breastfeeding. Bottles every 4 hours, whether you wanted it or not. That's how it was. And I guess no bonding. They didn't recognize bonding. They didn't know about it. Or in our you know
Interesting.
civilized civilized culture. Yeah. So
And
that's what she told me. 2 weeks she was in the hospital, and so was I, being bottle fed on a regular basis. And I look back as I research things like natural childbirth, and thankfully, you know, 40 years ago, storming was my first. Um, yeah, and that, I think it was great. And that's
So
what.
after you got back, what was a normal day like?
Uh, you know, I don't really remember. My mother didn't work; she was at home, I think. So I don't remember anything really great. My grandparents were 8 houses down the alley, and I've spent more time there.
Hmm.
I spent a lot of time there. It was my dad's parents. And I called her Mimi. I was probably mommy
That's
when I
it's
was a 2 or 3 year old, Mimi. But she was also French, French name, So when anyway, everybody. But I think it meant mommy.
that was your grandmother.
Yeah, my dad's
Interesting.
mother. Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with my dad's father and his and my grandmother. We called her Mimi as well. That's
Really,
uh-huh.
that
She
is
she
very
liked that
interesting.
French thing.
Huh. Really, her name was Marguerite Primo.
Exactly, Margaret. Yep.
Really, and
Hmm.
my other grandmother was Margaret, and that's where Margot came from. Something in there, Margaret.
What was school like back then?
Oh, okay. I don't. Let's see. I remember kindergarten. My mother took me there, and after that, I remember it was really easy. Just I guess easy, easy. And I don't think I remember first grade as much. I think it was the continuation. It was at a different school. I think. Yeah, first, second, third, and fourth was at a different school a few blocks away.
Now, I remember recesses, and I hear they don't give them to kids as often anymore. I assume they had them when you were in school.
I guess. But I was recovering from rheumatic fever when I went into kindy, and
Mm.
so I wasn't allowed to exercise, and
Mm.
so PE and exercise time that was always a stressful time later on because I know I was clumsy and wasn't I never got a chance to build my core either because I spent so many hours in bed, from until I was 8. They mandatory for my heart, which is wonderful heart.
Was it much different back then without computers and cell phones?
Well, kids just focus almost around them. So
That's a
that's
good
what,
point.
yeah. So I like jigsaw puzzles, and I like to have well, when I before I could read, I liked to be read to, which they did a lot when I was in bed with rheumatic fever. After that, I like to read. I like to stay. I was pretty much a loner. Uh,
How about now? Do you focus a lot on computers and cell phones now, or is that pretty much
more
not?
reading and
Yeah,
gathering information on YouTube.
yeah,
I don't like the communication that much.
yeah.
Yeah, if it's anything, I'm gonna share something, not say something. Mostly, sometimes I'll say something. But yeah, I spend my time on information channels like YouTube and
Learning.
yeah, learning. I want to learn. I love to learn, but every
um,
now and then I get tired of learning and I just watch like a Hallmark movie or something. Horse and dog movies too. I love.
um, what what book influenced your philosophy the most?
hmm, my philosophy.
Besides the Bible,
Yeah,
we're
of
gonna take
course.
the big book and set that aside so that we can
Right. I'm trying to
get
think
something.
probably, wow, the one that started my journey of thinking natural and knowing that that was an existent world out there, the natural world. I think Adele Davis, and I can't remember the names of them, but she was very much into nutrition and solving kids' physical problems with nutrition. And so I got into her right after I met David, and read quite a few of her things, and they, uh, you know, went on to other things she suggested, and it grew. Yep, I'm so glad.
Do you subscribe to those beliefs today?
As much as I can,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah. As much as isn't like extreme, and and get along with my family, and feed my husband what he wants. I don't
um,
feed him; he feeds himself. But
how did your family celebrate holidays? Christmas and
when
stuff
I
like
was a
that
kid.
when you were a kid?
Yeah, lavishly. Holiday dinners, centerpieces, decorations, presents that prove they love me, and that's how I remember it. And but I remember I always had a warm and um, spiritual feeling. I know it was spiritual now. That they weren't part of. I was just different.
Can you describe your parents?
My parents, okay, my dad, he was overweight. He's about 5'9". He was very much a social person. He liked to join like Lions Club and be the president. And, he's very much a joiner and a group person.
Mm-hmm.
He's also a braggart, I think, looking back. He liked to embellish his realities a little bit. and But he was huggy. I remember I could go hop in the bed on Sunday with the funny papers, and he would read the funnies to me. My mom would. My mom is cold. I married my mom because God has some things for me to work out, I think.
Tell me a little about your mom.
Yeah, well, okay. Between my mom and my dad had land. He's a landowner. He's a farmer. And he was a partner with his father, and they farmed the same land that my grandfather's father and his father had pioneered in 4 miles out of Tulare. Beautiful, beautiful soil. He raised when he was young. He had a dairy, and I think he had um, shorthorn cattle that were pedigreed. I remember he took them to the world's. My grandma used to tell me took him to the World's Fair via railroad to Seattle for competition. He probably didn't win, but anyway, that's quite a feat. Anyway, so my grandfather. Who was I talking about? My father.
We started talking about your dad and your mom, and then you mentioned that your grandfather
I
took
have to
those
go
up to
on.
the World Fair.
I guess I need to go on to that thread. Grandfather, and then go back to her mother. Go to that thread. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So grandfather Weaver.
Would you say your grandfather was one of your role models?
And I looked up to him, but
Yeah.
he was very closed, also like my
Mm.
mother. I think back now. Yeah, he was a role model. My dad was too. And there were warm times, when we did things together on the ranch. We lived 4 miles from the ranch. I always resented that. Really bad. After I grew up and hmm,
What exactly, that it was too close or too far?
too
Too
far. I
far.
wanted to be raised in the ranch, and
Mm-hmm.
all my life I wanted to live on a ranch, or at least where I live, raising chickens or dogs. That satisfied me finally. And yeah, that's what I read was Zane Grey novels and cowboy novels. When I got past 8 or something. Horse stores, dog stores, ranch stores, country stores.
TVs and other entertainment wasn't around as much like it is
I
today.
was 11, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Going on to grandfather. Okay. Weaver. He 5 kids in the family. He was the oldest. His father, I, down hidden away, actually committed suicide.
Sorry to hear
Uh,
that.
and my grandfather was in business college in Oakland at the time, and my grandmother and him must have met. I don't know how they met. She lived about 10 miles away from where he was raised, and that's a long ways when you're, horse and buggy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was in the teens. They were born just the end of 1997, 98, or 18. I mean 18,
Mm-hmm.
98. So it was like probably between 1910 and 15, sort of that time when they got to know each other and got married. So anyhow, she went to the University of California, Berkeley, and she was in a sorority house. That's all she ever shared with me was a sorority thing. I don't have no idea what she was studying. Probably how to find a husband because that's what they did then. Most of the women. So anyway, when his father committed suicide, there were three girls, and the youngest was another boy, and Mama. So he had to quit school and come home and take over the ranch. I don't think that. I don't think he. I think he did it out of duty, but I don't think that was his heart's desire.
Mm.
I don't know. Hard to know. But anyway, so
But he did it.
hmm and they got married. His three sisters were real important, or a couple of them were pretty important in my life. They were younger than him. They all became teachers. They went to what was called normal school in those days. And his youngest brother became a PH in something. He was a dentist and I don't. He's a doctor, but and a dentist. I remember he
Hmm.
was a dentist at one point in his retirement or something. Because I remember when I was probably in my 20s, or late teens, he was invited to set up a laboratory in Peru at a university. So I mean, he was up there, you know.
Hmm.
But that's what happened in those days was the country folks were looked down upon as far as intelligence and education, while the people that left the farms and got educated, they were the ones, you know, like got educated and respected. I mean, the country people are respected in their own culture, but you know, in the cities and what have you, country hicks. So I think my grandfather grew up under that. Uh, Grandmother was raised six of seven children, and their bunch came from France, and I have a whole 2 centuries worth of paperwork that traces them down to different places in France, and
Hmm.
I mean, it's quite extent. It's lots of
Would you say that French is your heritage?
part of it, yeah, yeah, Irish, English, French.
Hmm.
Because she's a fourth of me, and she was French. Weaver, I think that was English or German. I don't know. I don't know. One of those sisters, the banker, was a weaver. She had a loom, and she was known for her. I think she wove just, but she was also a teacher, and and then Aunt Stella. This is the one that was very influential in my life. She was the oldest one. She was far retired by the time I came around, and she rented a nice big house. I don't know why she didn't buy it. She really valued property, and she owned part of the property my granddad farmed, and he leased it. Um,
Would you say Stella was one of your role models?
Stella, she had a lot to do with who I am,
Yeah.
unknowns to me at the time.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, she came up. I remember she read me a lot of stories. She lived in Bakersfield, about an hour away, and her roommate was a librarian. So
Mm.
there was all kinds of,
Convenient.
yeah. And I remember one day she came. They didn't like my mom very much. I think because she drank a lot. She was lower class too. She didn't come from the landed people in the Silicon Valley. She came from poor folk in the Midwest during the Depression. So Aunt Stella, I'm sure they didn't care for her too much, although they were polite. But anyway, she came and she gave me my first Bible story book.
Mm.
I never heard the name of Jesus except in cursing before
Really?
in my home. Yeah, and granddad, maybe they didn't talk. They didn't curse, but they didn't. People didn't talk about their beliefs back then very much either.
Did you understand the significance of what she was giving you?
Not at first,
Yeah.
But she made sure my mother took me to Sunday school. She fixed me up in a Sunday school, which was a Methodist church, and then switched over to First Christian, which was non-spirit filled, but you know. Anyhow, that stuck. Because I kept going to. My mother would take me, to Sunday school camp. Still, I mean, sure. I'm really glad. Anyway, so after that, I don't know, I was probably 8 or 9 after I was not sick anymore. She would invite me to her house for a couple of weeks, and they take me down to the Southern Pacific train station and get on a passenger train and go to Bakersfield, and Aunt Stella would meet me. And I did that for several years.
Wow.
Yeah. Had a good time with her. We went to church every Sunday, but she didn't talk about God, and her roommate. she was like an aunt too because she was always there, a librarian, and Jeanette, and she sang in the chorus there. They went to the same church. But we played canasta at night, and Jeanette played the piano, and Stella taught me how to cook and how to sew because uh, that was her specialty in teaching. So she taught women how to be good homemakers. Lost art, and so she was very important. And when she passed away, by then my head was in cyst.
How old were you then?
Oh, I was like late 20s when
Hmm.
she passed away, but she'd been in a nursing home for quite a few years, like out of it,
Hmm.
you know. So yeah, my head was in a cesspool at that point. Um, she left me quite a bit, $18,000, which at that time, 1970, around that, 69, anyway, or 65 maybe. Took a few years, took a couple of years for me to get it in the, probate and stuff.
What was your first job like?
My very first job. Hmm. My mother took me to work with her one time. She was a bookkeeper where they sold big farm equipment, and just in the mornings, I think I got to file for her. Filing. I was probably in. I was probably 14 or something.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then I worked in a hamburger joint after I quit high school for about a week. uh, and
How did people find jobs back then? How did you find that? They put
uh,
up a sign?
yeah, in the paper, I think, or somebody would see a sign up on them or something. Yeah, I think it was a paper, probably the newspaper. Yeah, just the newspaper. Sometimes things would be on the radio. We used the radio a lot, for all kind of music and TV was kind of for sitcoms at night or something. But I remember good old radio on all the time back then in my teenage years. Yeah. So a lot of me has to do with my grandfather and his sister. Sister, I got an inheritance from another one, the middle sister, who was also uh, had no kids, and yeah, and Stella was married and divorced early on. Nobody knows more. Yeah, so I got money from both of those. I blew through the one going back to college, Porterville, and
Was that for nursing?
was starting to be for nursing, yeah. And
Hmm.
then I started smoking dope. The end of it, and I started gotten turned on to thinking, and
Pardon me for asking, but smoking dope, does that mean marijuana?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Lightweight, and that's when RFK Jr. was assassinated. That's 69, 68.
How how did that affect you, and how did everybody react to
Ooh,
that around you?
man, well, I was in college, second year, so I'd gone all hippie and black civil rights and stuff. First year, I was uh, getting divorced and having an affair with my biology teacher. Shame on me, but who was married with a pregnant wife. So I had
A lot going on.
after Bob. I guess so. Anyway, I haven't figured it all out yet. So anyway, my grandfather was gonna. He ran the ranch when my dad got home. Oh, I forgot about when I was 9. Korea War happened. My dad got drafted, and we went to live at Fort Ord over in the Monterey Bay. I remember that we lived there for 8 or 9 months, and and then we moved back. I rented the house out or something, and I was raised in the same house. But I remember liking it over there. First day I went to school there, they elected me the president. Number one person. They did that then because it was kids and transit. But I didn't know that. It made me feel so good. And yeah, we lived in an apartment, like two downstairs, two upstairs. We lived in upstairs, went in. People down below had a litter of puppies, little fox terriers, like little puppies, look like little Jack Russells or something, only wire haired. And I really wanted one. And so my parents decided, or my dad, I guess I had a collection of silver dollars from birthdays and blah, and I had probably 15 or something, and my dad said if I used silver dollars to buy her for $10, I could have her, so I did. Yep. Been sleeping with dogs ever since, except when I had babies.
Uh, did that time of war feel like hardship to you?
It was interesting, really interesting. Um, I had some really weird. I don't know if they were depressive days, probably because it was foggy a lot over there, and I don't do too good when there's not light. And I remember going out on the dunes, just feeling wild. I don't know. It was I can't even describe it. It's just dark, feeling dark. But
What was the most rebellious thing you did growing up?
oh, you don't want to know.
Okay.
I'll work into it maybe. Oh my God, no.
Um,
I'm gonna go back to my mother.
yeah.
I did dad kind of. Okay, my mom came from Kansas, Missouri. She was a waitress at this nice restaurant truck stop on the highway, and good for lunches and dinners. And that's where my dad met her in '39, and they got married in '39. I don't know anything, but anyway, later, and I was born in '42, so um, somewhere in there, they had her parents come out who were very poor, and my grandfather gave my other grandfather a job on the ranch. So, and I had this little one room cabin they lived in. I used to go spend the night with them sometimes when I was 5 or 6 or something, or maybe 3. And good time. I just remember it was a good old time. They listened to Grand Ole Opry, and bacon, and had a pot to pee in, and had an outhouse.
Hmm.
And it was all in one
All the
room.
amenities, yes.
Yeah, all the amenities I need. I just, I love a simple life. So,
With living a simple life, what was the biggest culture shock you faced
culture
growing
shock.
up and as the world changed? And
Um,
here we are today.
yeah, my biggest culture shock was the '60s when I realized that I believed a lie about our government and our way of life, and then I got into black culture, black history, black major, and the second year, I forgot about nursing. Just I was just really into it, and that was the culture shock. And I hated the police. I know Robin and Margot were 2 or 3, and we went to a little restaurant. There's some cops in there, and Robin says, "There's the pigs."
Oh
Yeah, that's how I raised them when they were little, and they were raised in a black community. When I was little, I wasn't, I was just all into it for a couple of years.
no.
I don't know, and yeah, I wasn't like picking quality. Let's put it that way. I got into dope smoking and got swirling down into the level. And
And that was before nursing.
uh-huh. Oh, I did nursing. I was 45 years old.
Oh, I see.
But that first college trip was junior college in Porterville. First year, I kind of eased into it. One English, and then the next time was 2 subjects, and then by then I was divorcing Bob and went full time for the year, and then the '60s came upon me. I was in probably '67 and '8. Uh, well, what happened? I went to visit some relatives of my grandfather's line in Santa Barbara. He was, and they were just hardcore New Age, and did the marches, and I never heard any of that because I was raised as a cowboy
Hmm.
culture,
Yep.
and I just picked up on it. I mean, I saw the truth, I saw it. I watched, uh, the fire, that first fire in Los Angeles. What can I think of the name? Starts with a W. Anyway, in the '60s, you were probably, well, you weren't even here. Of course not. Anyway, well, just never mind. There was it was like in southeast Los Angeles, black ghetto, and they were rioting,
Hmm.
and about set the place on.
You said this was 68?
So, then that was 66 or 7.
Oh, 60. Yeah.
And here we're watching the Vietnam War on TV, and we're watching the Watts riot.
Oh, the Watts riot. Yes.
Watts riot. That's the first riot that was, I knew about. And it was 100 miles away. And got me to thinking. And a couple of years, by the time a couple more years went by, I was divorcing Bob and got turned on to thinking, other than, you know, the redneck cowboy way.
Would you say that's the aspect of your personality that has changed the most over your life
Oh, from when I was a,
from how you were raised,
yeah,
or what you thought was the way the world is at first?
the way I was raised, I never liked, I was not a happy kid. I was very depressed and troubled, I guess. I appeared to be okay, but I know I wasn't. My mother drank, I'm sure. Uh, and then the time with my parents, and then the sickness happened on New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve, and I don't know. I had a lot of depressing problems. In fact, we went to counseling for a while. I wanted to go. I wanted because I wasn't getting along with them at all.
Hmm.
And my mother and
That sounds very mature of you.
I was 14, yeah, but I wanted to be 18. When I was 14, I looked like I was 18, and all I wanted to do is be able to drink legally. Isn't that crazy? My parents had always had booze around. They drank every day. They didn't get drunk, but I knew. I mean, they carried on. They had an office in the home where he kept books. Being a public, accountant, he kept books for farmers, and so from Christmas till March 15th instead of April, that's when the farmers' taxes were due. They were always in their office, and they had some of their clients. They'd take them in the kitchen, get a shot of whiskey, water bath. That's what they drink. And I grew up that way. So I don't know why. I never liked my mother. Maybe because she didn't rescue me in the hospital from those big penicillin needles and the rectal thermometers.
Do you still remember the big needles
Oh
and all
yeah,
that?
and I remember feeling I didn't know the word, but I know now. I felt violated with rectal, which makes me wonder if I wasn't abused before that. Hmm.
What what advice would you give to someone who was born after the year 2000?
Hmm.
Just the kiddos.
Hmm. Well, if you're born after 2000, from my point of view, it seems like a scary time. But from your point of view, it's totally normal. You're going to grow up and uh, hopefully develop some good character, some good spiritual health, and be a contributor to betterment of society and people, humanity.
When you were a kid, what did you dream about being when you grew up, and
A cowboy's wife.
did your path align or deviate from that?
Yeah, I deviated just for a touch. Okay. I was so hungry, touch hungry for a man, I guess. I became promiscuous, just because I was so needy. I just wanted some affection, I guess. Huh?
And then how did becoming a mother change your perspective on life?
My had of my mother.
How did becoming a mother
Oh,
change
becoming.
your perspective on life?
Unfortunately, it didn't with my first two, and I realized with when I was pregnant with Stormy that, and David, David changed my life. Oh, yeah, he oh, he really did. So was I when I was pregnant with Stormy. I said, well, I really screwed the last two up. I'm going to do this right. And that's why I went all natural from the beginning. Yeah, and I've nursed her for 4 years in our bed, the family bed, and I'm so glad
She turned out good.
she did. I'm so proud of her.
What do you consider as your greatest achievement?
I'll say that.
What do you consider as your greatest achievement?
Achievement, being a mother.
That is a lofty achievement.
Yes,
Absolutely.
that is the most important thing I've done. I've raised 6 people that are good people, have good hearts. They're contributors.
Mhm.
That's a good thing. You know,
How do you think your upbringing influenced your parenting style?
rebellion.
What do you mean?
I hated the way I was raised. I just rebelled against it from the moment I was able. Yeah, like well, when puberty, like when I turned high school age, between eighth grade. Well, that typically your brain is doing a lot of different things, finding itself. Boy, I just wanted to rebel. I used to do things like, well, I really wanted a car, after I could, and they wouldn't buy me a car for obvious reasons. But I I would get the keys. I would sneak out there 2 or 3 hours after they were asleep. I would roll the car out of the carpet down the alley in neutral, and then I'd get in where they couldn't hear me and go have fun for an hour or two.
That's funny. I did the same thing actually.
Did you really?
Yep.
Well, that's not the worst thing I did, but that's the worst thing I did as a teenager.
If you could, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, um, what would you say to reassure her or guide her?
Mm, to be a guider, should.
How would you reassure her or guide her if you could go back and talk to your
Oh,
younger
if I could
self
talk to myself. Oh my goodness.
at 14 or 20 or
Oh, at 6 or 7, I would just go, ah, I just want to have a good and loving heart. I don't want to hurt anybody. I want to not be thinking of myself. I just hurt everybody in my family, shame them, hurt them, and I really regret that. But I didn't, I was little. My heart was just what it was because of a lot of things.
so would you tell
Like,
her not to do that or would you suggest that
yeah,
it's going to be okay
I would
however?
say be positive. Think of the positive. Be thankful. Think of something to be thankful for.
Hmm.
That's my old age wisdom.
Hmm.
When you're really, really down and looking at darkness, look up and find a light and then go, what am I thankful for and why? You know?
That's some good advice. um, what was one defining moment that where you felt truly at peace with the decision with yourself?
Mm. Um, hmm. I guess, it's hard to say. I would like to say when I gave my life back to Jesus.
Hmm.
I think that wasn't the most peaceful. It was like, this is going to cause some waves, count the cost. But I was glad I did. Yeah. Yeah. Changed my life totally. Took me out of the cesspool and set me on a rock and washed me off.
Okay, just a couple more questions here. um, Decades from now, what do you hope people remember about you?
Oh, that I was a good and kind person, that I loved God and I loved my family. And I loved the thought of making America great again at this time. But yeah, I think that's what. And that I was a Earth person. I was an Earth mother. Yeah, earthy person. That I, since I was 35 years old. I guess that's when I first got turned on to it,
Hmm.
and or a little before. Anyway, love the outside. Do not like to live with people around me. People energize me, but I gotta get away. I gotta have my time away. I would hate to live in a city. I would detest it. It would be like prison. Have to live out.
Hmm. And
In
then
mountains, not flatland, mountains.
amen to that. I guess the last thing I'd like to know is there anything you'd like to say to your kids?
Hmm. All my kids. Well, I
Any
told,
advice?
yeah, advice. Well, guys, you're off to a good start, my kids. um, wisdom. Yeah, strive for wisdom, godly wisdom. Um, you're off to a good start raising your families, providing for your families. I'm proud of every one of you. Robin, you've had such bad luck. I'm still proud of you. Proud of you, Lord. And Michelle, you've covered her. You know, I'm proud of Michelle too. She's come through a lot with her kids. So yeah, I just the rest of you, you're all in great shape, I think. I'm just happy with your pathway and your wisdom and your the way you love your families and just teach that to your kids, and I'm sure you are. Just keep shining your light. It's your bright. Yep, I'm happy with, and I'm so thankful. Wow, I'm so thankful. You know, for having so many of you. I mean, I just know that when I started out, having kids was not my goal. I wanted horses and dogs. I wanted a horse rancher, married to one. I never thought about kids, but then when I got pregnant with the first two, I was it was like, oh well, this is what people do. And then with Stormy, I was pretty happy, but kind of worried because my life wasn't very stable. And man, and then I had three more, and not particularly planned for, and I just I kind of heard from God, well, you need more love. That's why He gave me six, and I didn't even ask for one. But I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful.
That's lovely. Um, well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
It's my pleasure.
And again, this is Marcia Shannon.
Yep,
And have a wonderful evening.
I will.